Navy Matters.
Welcome back here to HMTV, the Fog of War and Humanity. I'm your host, Richard Acritelli. We have Bob again here for our third episode, and we're going to get into his time working with the government and dealing with some of his major responsibilities through the organization of NOAA, right? Am I saying that correctly, NOAA?
National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration.
So now, what were some of your tasks, jobs, responsibilities?
I was the public information officer for the Eastern region, 16 states. I started under the Bush administration, about a year into it, and then President Clinton took over, and they fired a lot of people above me, and they kept me. And I was like the veteran in the public affairs part.
So you didn't get too hurt too bad by politics. I mean,
right.
It was there, but you kind of survived it a little bit, right?
I was sort of a political appointee. I kind of got the job through my performance by helping them with the radar facility in Yapang, but I did know people politically.
Sure.
Which didn't
And
hurt.
you've been around the corner, and your writing speaks for itself. And, they can't always get somebody to make the government look good or protect the government or keep an eye on it through your writing. So now, what were some of your operations, let's call them, or, I wouldn't, would you call them problems or, I mean, what would be a good word to call it? Would it be crisis, right?
I was the go-to man. I was the senior guy. With the change of administrations, I actually had to go to Washington for a couple of weeks to train my boss, bring her up to speed. And if something happened weather-wise in the country, they sent me. One thing that jumps out, they had a hideous tornado in Alabama. And I was there the next morning. They do what's called a survey to see if the Weather Service got the warnings out in time. It's like a disaster survey. So I was on the team. And I remember being in this community, and it was all dirt roads. And I was with the mayor and the sheriff. I was like, don't you guys pave the roads around here? They said, these roads were paved. The tornado stuck the asphalt right off the roads completely.
Just went right through it.
Yeah, the tornado damage was a half a mile wide for 26 miles. About 30 people were killed.
Let me ask you this. You look at weather and you see very serious things, whether it's on News 12 or the nightly news or, the news during the course of the day. Do you look at those news forecasts a little bit differently because of your background?
Absolutely. I know the people who created them, the systems, anything from NOAA headquarters in Washington, the Weather Service, the Severe Storm Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma. Whenever there was a hurricane, when I worked there, they sent me down to the National Hurricane Center. So I was the spokesman for the Weather Service during major hurricanes. The huge nor'easter. The Perfect Storm? There was a movie and book about it.
Yeah.
I was on the.
Was that Sebastian Unger who wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable book, right? And
yeah. And he also wrote the book about the disaster on Mount Everest, right? If you read that. And I was on the disaster survey team for that.
I've had some of the PJs from West Hampton Beach to 106. Yeah. Marty Vieira here, who's now head of the PJs, Lieutenant Colonel. Jack Brem, who made, I think it was something like 3,000 jumps out of an aircraft. He was a longtime PJ and then Suffolk County police officer. So those guys were very much, intermingled between there and then their responsibilities that were off our coast and then other areas of the world. And
they're heroes.
Just amazing, just unbelievable. Right?
The crazy story about the Perfect Storm is they had a ship they were trying to rescue offshore right in the middle of it. And the first rescue jumper went down. It was pitch dark, and he landed in the water. And the second one, the waves were so high that the trough of the wave, it was a 100-foot wave. So the first jumper jumped in 20 feet, but the second jumper dropped 120 feet, and I believe he was lost.
Who's that, Rick Smith?
Yeah.
Rick Smith, right? And that was something that just, you know, I would imagine it devastated that base and the area because, you know, even though these military personnel go all over the world from West Hampton Beach, they live in these areas. And
they're our neighbors.
Yeah, they're our neighbors, you know. So now let's take a look at NOAA, right? Now, you have some unbelievable experiences that are very sad. It's tragic, right? But it kind of hit this area, okay, in and around Long Island. So let's take a look at Flight 800.
Yes.
So what could you walk me through the background of Flight 800?
So the night of Flight 800, I was actually staying in a friend's beach house in Mastic, right on the water. And I was inside. I didn't go outside, so I didn't know what was going on. And I got a call from my boss in Washington. He said, "Bob, what's going on out there? I heard there was a plane crash." I was like, "I didn't hear anything about it. Let me go outside and look." And I was almost directly across from the crash site. And the entire sky was lit up orange. The jet fuel was burning on the water. The crash had just happened. And the next morning, NOAA has ships that do mapping for harbors. So they have sonar capabilities. So if there's like a sunken ship or, you know, an old car in a shipping lane, they're able to upgrade the maritime maps. So we had a ship called the Rudy that was working out of New York Harbor doing mapping, harbor mapping, and they brought the ship in to look for the wreckage of Flight 800.
So then they sent it out east along the water, right off Smith's Point?
Yep. So I was the spokesman for that operation.
Wow.
So they had the JIC, Joint Information Center, and pretty much the whole operation for Flight 800 at the East Merchants Coast Guard Station.
So now, who do you talk to? You get this assignment. You're dealing with this crisis, right? Tragedy. Who do you talk to on the ship?
Well, the captain. So it's an interesting story.
And they have to make time with you, right? They have to.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know how to present what's happening. Right?
Yeah, I'm their spokesman. So at the Coast Guard station, they had like a media center. You know the television trucks with the big antennas? There was probably about 20 of those, international, all over the world. Attention on this because the people who were killed were international. If you go to the Flight 800 Memorial Park by Smith's Point, they have flags of all the countries. There's probably about 20 different nations represented. So there's heavy media presence. And we got permission to take a crew, just one news crew, out to the ship, which would have been out to the crash site. So there wasn't much going on. The Hallstrom from the FBI and the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, they would give briefings.
And he took over
because
the investigation.
It was a criminal investigation. So in between briefings, there wasn't much going on. So they had a big, not a blackboard, but like a big poster board where they post information. And I had a flyer that said I would take one crew out to the crash site. And I kind of walked up to the bulletin board with a thumbtack, and I tacked it up and backed off a little bit. And the first person read it. They were like, "Pick us, pick us, pick up." Make like a commotion. And everybody read so there was probably about 100 news media, and they swarmed me. I felt like a rock star. I didn't think I was going to get out of there alive. So I picked the crew from ABC, and we went out to the crash site, interviewed the crew.
Was there any rhyme or reason towards the crew that you picked? Why you picked them, or
not
just
really,
the closest to
I'm
you?
not really sure. I think it was the first crew that read it and said, "Pick me, pick me." So they first come, first serve. But everyone wanted to go out. Over the next few days,
you're briefing them all anyway, so it's
over the next few days, I took out probably 10 more different crews to the crash site. And our ship was able to identify the debris stream.
So when you take them out, where down there did they get on the boat to go out to the wreckage?
Right from the first time out, we chartered a local guy, like just a charter fisherman, a big, beautiful fishing boat.
Where was that out of?
Out of Senatoriches.
Senatoriches, okay.
Captain Wayne.
And that's your backyard right there,
yeah.
Right?
So I'd get on the boat with Captain Wayne. We went to Union Avenue Dock in Senatoriches, picked up the crew, And incredibly, as we're driving, I'm talking to Captain Wayne. My father was his godfather. And I didn't know that.
Wow, what a coincidence, right?
Did you know that your dad, Michael Chartuk, was my godfather? I was like, really? He was good friends with my father. So we took the crew out there, and they were our boat was hard at work. They were identifying the debris field. It stretched for 9 miles. We had found every piece of it.
And it was out in the Atlantic Ocean?
8 miles out, and 120 feet of water.
Did they find any pieces like in the bay, in the Great South Bay?
No.
So it was all contained.
Yeah, when the plane blew up, the official explanation was it was the center fuel tank.
Wow.
Caught a spark, and the vapors exploded the plane. That was all offshore.
And it was 120 miles?
The plane was about 8 or 9 miles offshore.
But it was spread out.
And the debris field was about 9 miles.
9 miles.
And they found every piece of it, recovered it, and rebuilt the plane at an airplane hangar at Grumman in Calverton. And people say there was a missile that was shot up at it. In the reconstructed plane, there was no evidence of a missile strike. There wasn't like a hole in the fuselage.
And if you remember that plane, they did a heck of a job salvaging it and putting it together.
Yeah,
and
rebuilt it.
Rebuilt it, right? So
yeah.
So the conspiracy theory isn't really there.
I have friends of mine who swear they saw a missile go up and hit it. But the official explanation is when the explosion happened, the nose of the plane separated and went down, and the rest of the plane, traveling 300 miles an hour, went up and left a trail of smoke and light. And that's what people could have seen as a missile.
And the fumes, right? There was fumes in the tank.
Yeah, the people were probably killed instantly. I have friends who were on the ocean that night and went in and tried to find survivors, and they found victims. And my friend Wayne Holtz told me that every one of them, their clothes were completely blown off.
Wow. Terrible, right? And that happened within a hair of where you were.
I was within a seagull's flight on the beach right there.
I remember that night, and I was just up William Floyd Parkway. I was like in Rocky Point, Sound Beach. Not Sound Beach, Rocky Point, Shoreham, and Wading River, and the police going down there.
It was a huge
and it was just,
response.
You knew something was bad. It was, now, where was the plane supposed? It was supposed to go to Europe, right?
Paris.
Paris.
Yeah, and they had from the Montoursville High School in Pennsylvania. They had the French club.
Okay.
They were heading to holiday in France.
Have you done any stories like recently on Flight 800 or anything along those lines?
Because my next story, I'll go right into it. So because I had the experience with the ship Rudy, with the sonar capabilities, I got another call. John F. Kennedy Jr. was lost overnight on his way to Martha's Vineyard from a small airport in New Jersey. Our ship Rudy is on its way to help find it. And
were you back on there again?
Yeah, I jumped in my car, drove to Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And I was picked up by a Navy ship and brought out to our ship. Right when I got there, the sun was just starting to set. It was the next day. And the captain said, "Bob, we think we found him."
And you knew right away, they knew right away that was John F. Kennedy Jr., that was his plane?
Yeah, we looked at the screen. In nature, there's not a lot of straight lines. So if you're doing sonar and see straight lines, it looked like a plane. We think that's it. So we marked it with a buoy, backed off. The Navy ship, the Grasp, I believe, or the Grapple, one of these recovery ships, was on scene. It's a massive response. The Navy divers went down at night.
Now, what do you remember from the government's reaction? They hear Kennedy Jr. goes down.
Yep.
They know it's not, it's bad. What was your, what do you remember the government saying and doing at that time?
It was a massive search and rescue. They were looking for him. They were hoping to find him alive.
They were using all those resources to get to him, right?
Yeah, and if you remember, I think Clinton was the president at the time, and he said, anything you need, every Navy ship.
What year was that? Was that 97, 98?
Yeah, yes. Yep. And it was a massive search, and it was NOAA, our ship, that was right there, and we found him.
Unbelievable, right?
Yep. And I was the spokesman for that operation, describing how we found him, what capabilities we have to locate wreckage, such as Flight 800.
Now, you look at Flight 800, and you look at Kennedy, both tragedies, loss of people, right? You know, I don't want to minimize or maximize one over the other, but the response of the government for Kennedy, because of the name, the history and everything, did they kind of sit down and talk with you and kind of coach you a little bit? This is how we want you to handle this name, or was it just you had to be as completely factual as possible? Did they try to say, all right, we have to be a little sensitive about this, or we want to, you know, one thing you remember about Jackie Kennedy was incredibly private person, right? She tried to protect
no publicity.
No publicity. Like, you know, she wanted her kids to have a normal life, and, you know, out of the eye a little bit there. Did they talk to you about any of that?
For a disaster like that, same as Flight 800 in East Mauritius, they set up what's called a Joint Information Center, the JIC, and they give briefings. So whoever is in charge, I think it was somebody from the Navy. I don't remember who was in charge of the JIC for Kennedy, but he would give the briefings. Like, I wouldn't stand up at the JIC, you know, the next day and give a briefing on what's going on.
Yeah.
But I would do a sidebar with the media and tell them, you know, the Navy, the NOAA ship, the Rudy, and the Whiting was our second ship, and I explained to them how it would work. So it was kind of like a sidebar to the main story.
But you had to be extremely sensitive with. I mean, it was, and I'm trying not to take away. I guess it's completely different. You have a jumbo jet with so many people that were lost, and then you have, you know, on the other side of the coin, like Camelot, in terms of it was only a couple of people in a small plane, and, you know, really a novice flyer, right? And, you know, it's just you saw some terrible things, right? In terms of right off the coast of Long Island, and you know, in terms of Kennedy, Martha's Vineyard there. Now, did you have reporters that covered Kennedy that was covering that story? Did you see the reporters get choked up because they were there to see some of this stuff? I mean, it must have hit them a little bit.
Yeah, when they gave their broadcasts, when I took the ABC crew out for the first run, the reporter taped his report right from the ship. And he was pretty factual and pretty, you know, they're mostly professional.
Sure.
I didn't see too much, but I will say that the international media attention for both events were probably about the same. They were really turned out for Kennedy.
Wow. And now you look at Kennedy, you don't know John F. Kennedy Jr., you're not traveling in the same circles, most people aren't, right? But what's the similarity that you have with Kennedy?
Well, I was a contemporary of his. I actually wrote a book about what we're all talking about here, Flight 800, the Kennedy response. And I started it, the first chapter of the book is the Navy bringing him up. I was standing on the Rudy when the crane from the grapple, the ship, brought his plane up. His body had been recovered, and I was there to watch the plane come up. And that's the opening paragraph, really, in a book that I wrote about it. And I researched the Kennedy family. I knew a lot about them. My mother was a big Kennedy fan. She would get the National Enquirer and the Globe and the Star. So there was a lot of Kennedy on the front page in my house.
When you wrote the book, did any of the family reach out to you?
No. I never heard anything from them. And there was an interesting story I was telling you earlier, and you actually knew about it. I didn't. So JFK's father...
Yeah, PT 109.
Yep, and it was rammed by a Japanese cruiser. They plowed right through it and kept going. They thought they killed everybody, but they didn't. JFK Jr.'s father survived, and he brought his crew to a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific, and there was no water. Heavy Japanese patrol, so he went out at night swimming. And he was injured in that crash.
And his health
deteriorated.
Was never good. Before, during, after.
From that point.
Right? You look at Kennedy, that young, Eisenhower looked like the grandfatherly figure. Kennedy was supposed to be a young guy. But his health was never good.
Yeah.
So
at night, he found another island, relocated his crew where there was a water source, and he wrote a message on a coconut. And they had been visited by islanders, in canoes. And he wrote a message to the Navy on a coconut and gave it to one of the islanders, two of them, and said, the first Navy vessel you see, give this to them. And that's how the crew was rescued. And that coconut is in the Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston.
Something, right?
And what I learned, too, researching it, is JFK Jr., he was editor of George Magazine. He was, New York City. He kind of did his own thing a little bit, right? Didn't he go to Brown instead of Harvard, right? And he was kind of his own man a little bit, right? And he worked as an assistant district attorney, I think, in the Manhattan office.
Yeah.
He was a lawyer. Whether or not he had aspirations or not to become political, we don't know. So he invited the children of the two islanders that helped rescue his father to Manhattan and, did a ceremony and everything. And he found out that one of them was named John F. Kennedy. They named one of the children after his father.
Something, right?
And he took good care of them. He bought them all homes. He bought them boats, which I thought was a nice thing to do.
Which is amazing. The interesting thing about Kennedy, and I was telling you this, when we were talking before, is that Kennedy was immensely wealthy, Brahmin class, right? The highest of the high. He wrote that book. What was the book called?
Profiles in Courage was the father.
What was JFK's book? Was Why America Slept or something like that? And it's something along those lines. And Joe Kennedy Jr. ends up buying every copy of the book to ensure that it becomes a bestseller, right? You see them playing football at Hyannisport and, obviously horses and cars and education. And he's traveling Europe as World War II starts, right? He's got all the women. He's got everything, right? And they always say about Kennedy, he was a playboy and he was spoiled and he was reckless and this and that. But he had gone into the service. So he had all these things. And that just goes to show you like that time period, where, he did his duty.
He served your country.
He served his country. He was a combat veteran. His brother, too, had all those privileges and all those things. And he was supposed to be really the president. And he ends up dying in that secret mission.
Yeah,
right?
tell the folks what happened to Joe Kennedy.
Joe Kennedy Jr., right?
Was flying a secret mission.
Didn't have to do it. It was like the end of really, I believe, his tour. And there's so much unknown about it. All they know is he went up in the air and he was over France, I believe it was. He gets shot down. And
his plane exploded.
His plane exploded.
It was loaded with explosives.
And it was a top secret mission. And, you look at the Kennedys with that luck is just...
Oh, it's so tragic.
Brutal. It's just terrible, right? So, all right. So now the third, flight, right, that you had to deal with. Yeah,
based on my experience with Flight 800 and John F. Kennedy Jr., there was another plane crash off of Nantucket, EgyptAir Flight 990, which is a crazy story. The co-pilot had been fired by the airline for misbehavior, and this was his last mission with the pilot who fired him.
Should have left him home, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So when the pilot got up to go to the bathroom or whatever, came back into the cockpit, the co-pilot had turned off the engines, and the plane was going down. And apparently they got him back on, and they fought. The plane went up and down. Co-pilot
with all passengers on it,
freaking out, and it crashed. And our ships once again went out and found the wreckage.
How many people?
100 or so, 150 plus crew.
And they were going across the Atlantic, and
EgyptAir, I think, was going to Europe. I'm not sure which city.
Wow. Was there ever any backlash against?
Well, the U.S. government played the cockpit recording and blamed it on the pilot, the co-pilot, and the Egyptian government refused to believe it, and they blamed it on Boeing, mechanical error. So there was kind of a diplomatic snafu there between the U.S. and Egypt.
Those black boxes don't lie, right?
They had the voice recording.
They had the
of
voice
them
recording
fighting.
itself. And you handled the press release?
For that, yes.
Wow. What was that like in terms of dealing with now you're dealing with a foreign country, foreign crisis, right?
It was the worst one because the night I got there, I holed up in this old dilapidated Howard Johnson's, and there was a nor'easter blowing through. And of course, there's wind, and the doors of the hotel were rattling. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
So without any sleep, I had to, get up the next morning, and go out on very rough seas. And it wasn't as much media attention on that one as the other two.
But it's serious, though. Those
international
are
incidents.
All three, Flight 800, Kennedy, Egyptian Airlines. You're dealing with the loss of people. You're dealing with disaster at sea and trying to piece things together and get some answers, not only in terms of the government, but for the people and the families. And I mean, that's something that's not an easy job to do.
Yeah, and to answer your question, you do have to be sensitive.
You got to be sensitive about it.
Be matter of fact, factual. You don't want to make any comments.
And a lot of still unknowns in terms of you're trying to piece together some very, very tragic puzzles, right? Itself. So
what happened?
Okay, so Bob, thank you very much for coming down. We're gonna definitely have you back here again. It was outstanding, having
pleasure.
you. Oh, it's unbelievable, talking to you and watching. You talk about these stories. And then following you in terms of, reading your stories. Do you want to give a plug towards your stories in
Sure.
terms of where are you located? Where could people see you?
Go to southshorepress.com or at South Shore Press on Twitter. All my stories are there. This week was big with the 9/11 ceremonies and the murder of Charlie Kirk. I wrote a bunch of stories on that.
Sure.
Anything that pretty much goes on, I'll write about it.
Yeah, and you could handle terms of national, local, and global too. It's connections here to Long Island, New York State, this area. Right?
I wrote a story, as you know, about the military museum, which you've been a big part of in Rocky Point.
Yeah, we're looking to expand that, and we'll definitely have you down there. We have a lot of great things, and you gave us a couple of things in terms of this journal from World War I, which is just. It looks like a little notepad that you write your notes in. And the penmanship from, 1918 is amazing. It's local history. Yes. So, but Bob, thanks again.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us here on HMTV and the Fog of War and Humanity.